A woman in a neighborhood decided to sue everybody in the neighborhood. She was a rich widow. She had nothing better to do. One of these angry people type situations. She went to law school, became an attorney, and started suing all of her neighbors because. Hi guys, Will Terry here, and this video is going to be called "Is Drawing and Selling Fan Art Legal?" And this is a hot topic, so I think I'm just going to dive right in. And I'm kind of going to be sharing my screen here in a little bit. And now, before I get going on this, I just want to say that I am not an attorney, right? I am not giving legal advice. I'm only giving you my opinion, okay? Throughout this whole video, I'm just going to be giving you my opinion, not legal advice. And I also want to respect the fact that I know there are people out there, some of you watching, that are probably going to be pissed off that I'm making this video, that are probably totally disagreeing with my opinion here. But I'm just going to make my case, and you're welcome to leave comments. My wife loves to say that I love making videos because no one can interrupt me, and I can just say whatever I want. There's some truth to that. Okay, so let's start out by defining, by saying what is fan art. I've talked about fan art before, and a lot of times I'll get in the comments like, I don't even know what fan art is. It's funny because, 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't either. It's basically just, it's the stuff that we did when we were kids, when we started drawing our favorite superheroes or, our favorite characters. You're a fan of that character and you're making art. So that's what you're doing. You're drawing a character from a movie or from a comic book or from some sort of a story, something that's in pop culture, something that's famous, and you're drawing it for fun or you're drawing it for money. And there's lots of different things to talk about, so I'm just going to kind of dive right in. So let's first define terms, because what I find out there, the reason I'm making this video is because I've seen a lot of blog posts, I've seen a lot of articles, I've seen videos, and the one thing that I find missing from this discussion is the nuance of the various levels of fan art. So I really want to go into that first. I mentioned this in another video earlier this month, but I want to go into it more deeply on this one. So I had put in the other video that there were like 4 levels of fan art, but then a friend, Ian, or Evan, I'm sorry, Eden, I knew I was drawing a blank there, said, well, I think there's a 5th level, so I'm going to include that too. So the first one is, you look at an image on Google or in a book or from a movie or whatever, and you copy it. Whether you trace it or whether you look at it and try to copy it as closely as you can, that's level 1 fan art. That's the lowest level. And I'm a big fan of copying. I think you copy to learn. And because I'm an instructor in illustration, both in UVU and online at svslearn.com, I am a huge advocate of copying work. That's how we learn, right? So I am definitely not saying there's anything wrong with copying, but you can't copy to make money, right? You can't copy to pass it off as your own and say, look at this amazing thing that I drew. This is mine. This is all mine. We copy to learn, and that's great. The second one is you copy something you've seen on Google or a movie or whatever, or a comic book. It could be, you might be doing a direct copy, but then in the rendering, you totally do it in another style. So it might be done, real painterly in oils or something, or with pastels, or maybe you're doing markers and you're doing some kind of treatment that looks really different. You're adding splatters to it or something, but still, you could hold up the original, find it on Google, and go, well, that's where you got it from, right? So I think that's level 2. Level 3 is you change the pose to an original pose, right? So maybe you're looking at the costume of, let's say, Wolverine or something, But then the way you draw it is a pose that's not anywhere out there that you haven't seen before. It's a totally new composition. But everything else, I mean, it is Wolverine, right? I mean, you've copied that the way it looks, but it's totally changed into your own pose and your own style, right? Of drawing and or coloring or rendering, however you want to do it. So that's level 3. You're not going to be able to do a reverse image search on Google and find it anywhere or find something that looks really close to it. Level 4, I would say, is an original pose. And you might even copy the costume to some extent of the character, so you can easily tell what character it is that you're doing. But you add an original part of the concept or story, so you change the story of this character. So think mashup or change it in some way, like this stuff that I'm doing, the fan art I'm doing. I'm changing the characters into kids, but not just changing them into kids. I'm also asking, what would they do when they were kids? So I'm adding a totally new concept, giving them props, giving them things that they're doing. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll just bring in one. So here's Alien, right? And Alien looks like Alien, but Alien now has braces because Alien's a kid, and Alien is climbed aboard a child's coin-operated toy, right? So adding a new concept, new props, things that were never in the original story and the original concept. Now, again, I know that there are some people that really have a problem with this, and we're going to address that, right? But I think that this is I put this at level 4. Here's another one. This one's really recognizable. But if I go to this one, a lot of people didn't know who this one was, right? And then they get it after the fact. Now, I think that this one is even safer because nowhere, no way, no how can you ever say that the character itself looks like the character from the movie. And if you haven't figured out who this is yet, it's Jason from Friday the 13th. And the only thing that gives it away is the hockey mask. Now, is that question you have to ask yourself on this one is the hockey mask, can no one draw a hockey mask because they used it in Friday the 13th? And the answer is no. Anybody can draw a hockey mask. They took a generic item and used it for that character. Now, if you drew Jason with the knife, with the hockey mask, with the costume that he had in the movie, you could run into trouble. But I think changing it this far, I think it would be really difficult to find out, to have a problem with this, with legal, copyright issues. The 5th level would be you have an original pose. You might have changed the costume, but it looks nothing like the original at all, even further than where I've gone with that. And I would use Jed Henry as an example of that. And this is his website right here, and he did the Yukio Heroes. And so if you haven't checked out this project, it did amazingly well on Kickstarter, earned over $300,000 on Kickstarter, and he sells these at Comic-Con conventions. But here's one of his prints. And I'd ask you, can you tell who this is? If you don't already know, if you haven't looked at it, it is, I'll give you a hint, it's from a famous 16-bit game and a Nintendo game. And now, he doesn't write that anywhere on his site. This is I think this is the highest level of fan art that you can probably get to. He calls it Rickshaw Kart, okay? So he doesn't use the name at all. And the name, really, if you haven't guessed this is actually Mario Kart. And so, but it's, these guys are racing along, and you've got the mushroom guy here and the turtles and stuff like that. But it's so far removed from the way the original looked that upon first glance, second glance, third glance, most people won't even get what it is. But this is an extremely popular project. So I just wanted to define those terms first, right? To figure out where we're talking about. Because again, in the discussions that I find online, it's people get in the camp of fan art is bad or fan art is good. Well, not all fan art is legal and good to do, and not all fan art is bad, right? There's nuance to this. So we've got to be able to talk about and separate out what we're actually talking about, or else the conversations get muddled, and then you find out after the swearing and after the fight has kind of started to wear itself out, you find out that people aren't even talking about the same things, right? So that's another reason why I wanted to make this video. Now, again, I'm no lawyer, so this is how I see it. This is not a legal thing here, right? So let's talk about the legalities of it, and some case history and things that have happened online. I'm sorry, I'm itching. It's allergy season out here, and there's nothing I can do about it. In my hay fever's going off in the spring. So you can copy stuff, but when you sell it, that's where you run into trouble, right? So making fan art in any form and putting it on your blog or on Facebook or Twitter, nobody's going to go after you. No lawyer, no IP, and when I say IP, I mean intellectual property owner, the people that own the movie or the comic. They're not going to go hunting down anyone who's not making money. So a lot of people have asked, well, I'm afraid to put that on Facebook. Fear not, you could copy it all day long, in my humble opinion, and put it on Facebook, and no one's going to go after you because you're not making any money from it. Okay, so that's first off. So I think it's important to know, though, that many IPs want fan art to be made, right? So, and they want fan art to be made, and I would even make a case, this is an opinion again, I would make a case that they want fan art to be made so bad that they don't mind if we're making, as artists, that we're making money off of it. Now, Star Wars, or any of the IPs, the big ones out there, Marvel, what they're going to come after you for is they don't want you making the same product that they're making, right? So if they're selling little figurines of their characters and you copy a figurine of their character and start selling it, you're probably going to have a problem, right? Especially if you start making money. But and the reason I say that a lot of them want fan art made is look at how many conventions there are between your Comic-Cons all around the country. WonderCon, FantasyCon, DragonCon, LuxCon. There are, if you look at the calendar of events, there are multiple dozens of events sometimes happening in 1 month around the world, all happening all the time. And they all have artist alleys. And in those artist alleys, 90% of what's being sold is fan art. I would say if they didn't want it happening, they would be shutting these things down. They would go in there and say, this stuff is illegal, get rid of it. Now, there was a letter that was sent out to all the people that were selling stuff at WonderCon. This is April 2016, and WonderCon just happened like 2 weeks ago, I think. And a letter was sent out to artists, and it talked about copyrighted material and things like that. The wording of it led you to believe that they were talking about pirated movies, DVDs and things like that. Some artists took it as they're going to shut you down at WonderCon if you're selling fan art. Well, that didn't happen. Everybody went to WonderCon and they sold their fan art. Okay? So I would think that if these big IPs, because how long has Comic-Con been around? These events, they've had plenty of time. If they wanted to shut it down, they would shut it down. Now, I did make another video, and I'll link it here. The fact that you want fan art to be made. If you're somebody that doesn't like fan art, and I'm not going to go into that right now, but I make a case of why you actually should want fan art to be made. And it's simply because you will not have the venue to sell your stuff, your original content, if not for Artist Alley. And since Artist Alley is selling 90% or more fan art, if they shut Artist Alley down from the fan artists, there is no Artist Alley, and then you don't get to sell your original. That's the gist of that video. So spoiler, right? So that would be one thing, but there are also examples of IPs that have promoted fan art. This is one of them right here. Some friends of mine at Board Shorts TV, they do Kid History, And one of the things that happened was they got invited down to the studios in California, Disney, to do a Star Wars piece. So this is, I'm just going to play a little tiny bit of it here, but does this look anything like Star Wars to you? Right? So invited, they were given actors, they were given costumes, they were given camera people, they were given lighting, they were given the set, all of that stuff that they didn't have to pay for was given to them for free, so they could make their own little movie, right? And that was made to look exactly like the bar scene in Star Wars, right? But it's a parody. It's fair use, and it's a satirical commentary on the scene that actually happened in there, right? So there's examples of IPs that are actually promoting fan art because they know that when there's fan art, there's a celebration of their IP, and they want to sell more of their IP. They want to sell more whatever it is they plan on doing in the future. And the best way to keep it going is to get people talking about it. The best way to keep people talking about it is to let fan artists, let artists continue to sell their stuff, right? So there's that example right there, right? And then let's talk about what could happen, right? So let's say you're making fan art and you're worried about whether you're getting too close. In fact, before we do that, let's talk about a case, okay? Because some people say, well, if it looks at all, if your fan art is, again, I went through the 5 levels there. If you're in 1, 2, 3, or 4, where any part of it looks like the original IP, then you're in trouble and you could get sued and all that stuff. So first off, let me just say that in this country, and I'm talking about the US, we have a system over here, and I can't speak to other countries. I know I'm pretty sure that in the UK they have a system of loser pays, but over here you could be sued for anything at any time, and you have to defend yourself. That means you have to pay for your own attorney, and if you win, you don't get the money back. You could countersue, but you, at the end of that lawsuit, when you win, you've still paid your attorney, right? So just keep in mind that anybody can sue anybody in this country for any reason at any time. Now, the question is, does that make them right? If I sue you, am I right? If I sue you because you're making loud noise, does that make me right and you wrong because you got sued? See, in some of these arguments, I've heard people say, well, you could get sued. Yeah, someone could sue me, but that doesn't mean that they're right. Now, that doesn't also mean that I'm not going to roll over. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to cease and desist, and usually that's what will happen first. You would get a cease and desist letter if an IP sees what you're doing, they don't like it, they can say, you got to stop this, and if you don't, we're going to sue you. And that's usually what would happen first, is they'll send you a cease and desist letter. If you get a letter like that, your choice is to keep doing what you're doing and risk getting sued, which if they go to the length of sending you a cease and desist, I would assume that they will probably follow up with a lawsuit if you don't stop. But maybe not. If you have deep pockets and you feel like you're in the right, you could continue to go. I will say, let me just tell you a quick story that I saw in the news one time. A woman in a neighborhood decided to sue everybody in the neighborhood. She was a rich widow. She had nothing better to do. One of these angry people type situations. She went to law school, became an attorney, and started suing all of her neighbors because that was her hobby. It became her hobby to be this angry person who could inflict power and control over her neighbors. And the ones across the street got sued for not taking their garbage cans in the day that it was, like, they left them out the day longer, and she sued them. She lost that case. Another one was, there was a family playing basketball. The kids would play basketball in the driveway, and the curfew was 10 o'clock, and they played till 10 minutes after. She videotaped them, and they left. They went inside at 10:10 at night. So she sued them because they were after curfew. The judge threw that one out of the court too. But the family had to spend $5,000 defending themselves, and so they were bullied by this woman. So I just want to say, when I've in other conversations, when I've said that IPs can bully you, they really can bully you. They could take the picture that I showed before of Jason, Some attorney that owns or that works for the company that owns Friday the 13th could say, hey, that guy's doing Friday the 13th. And they could sue me and they could take me to court. And if I said, you know what, I can't believe you're suing me for this one. This is parody. I've totally changed it. I'm totally fine. I fall under the fair use doctrine. And I'm willing to fight this. And we go to court. The judge could easily throw this out. Okay. So one of the arguments that I hear online a lot is, well, they'll sue you, Well, that doesn't make them right. Okay. So I'm just wanting to make sure that we understand that. Now, most artists don't have the money, and most of us will stop doing the thing that they want us to stop because, again, we're getting bullied if we're doing something that we feel is totally in the right, but we don't have the money to defend ourselves, so we will probably still stop. I think it's good to push against the law a little bit if we can, because I think we, as artists, really add a lot. Remember, there are companies out there like Saturday Night Live, Mad Magazine, there's Blazing Saddles, Airplane, Scary Movie. All these are parody movies. They do satire, commentary, and they do things that look like the original. Okay, and sometimes they get sued. Okay, but they are also bigger companies, and sometimes they win. One such case that I want to talk about is Pretty Woman by, and I guess I have the same thing out here. Let me go. By Roy Orbison, right? So I'm just going to play this for a second. This was a landmark case right here. So I hope you can hear this. Okay, so you know the song, right? Okay, so the story is, and this is, you can find this on Wikipedia, and I'll show you in just a second here, that Two Live Crew, and this is their version of it right here, they asked Acuff Rose, who is the publisher of Roy Orbison's Pretty Woman, if they could use the lyrics in their rap song. And Acuff Rose said, no, you cannot use our lyrics. So they asked permission. So they did it anyway. And they made their song. And they sold 250,000 copies of their DVDs or their CDs. And then Acuff Rose took them to court and sued. And then Acuff Rose lost. Because, let's listen to this song and see how much it's changed. Okay, so we have the same lyrics going on. So my point there is, and from what I've heard from a lot of people is, you can't do anything that looks like, sounds like, smells like, tastes like the original, because then you're in violation. And that's simply not the law. Okay? So if we look at the law right here, and just a part of it, one thing to keep in mind. Now again, I'm no lawyer. And I'm not giving you advice to do this. I'm just saying this is my opinion, that my interpretation of this is that you can still be safe and still make some of your artwork have resemblances of the original. But the more you do that, the more gray area you're going to be in, and the more risk of getting sued you're going to be. So you're definitely in more of a danger zone by doing so, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong by doing it. It just means that you could get sued, and if you can't defend yourself, then you're going to have to quit, or you might end up having to lose a lot of money, right? Or you could win in court. But it's important. This is the actual case, Camel versus Acuff Rose Music, and it talks about Two Live Crew in here, and you can read all this. There's a lot of articles written on this case. And to note, there's a lot of cases out there like this where the artist has won. So I just want to make sure you understand that. But right here it says, in determining whether the use made of a work in any particular case is fair use, the factors considered shall include. And then it gives 4 factors. It doesn't say that all 4 factors have to be met. These are not 4 criteria that your piece has to meet. These are factors that are considered, right? The word considered. These factors to be considered. So the judge is going to look at your thing if it ever goes to court, and they're going to say the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is non-for-profit. So if you're making money off it, if you're not making money, you're automatically probably going to be safe, because then you fall under fair use. So I teach at the university, and we use stuff all the time that we project, and that protects us if we want to project images at school, because we're not making money as a teacher. We're not making extra money by showing that. We need to be able to show it for educational purposes, right? And that's where it's covered right here, educational purposes. Okay. The second one is the nature of the copyrighted work. How more vague could that be? I don't even know what that means. The third one is the amount of substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyright. So this is basically how much did you change? How much did you borrow? How much did you keep? How much did you lose? How much did you change it, right? So that's a factor. So if you're not changing it at all, you're going to be in more danger than if you're changing it a ton. So again, going back to the example I showed, Alien is a lot closer to the original than Jason. Alien looks like Alien, but then there's a lot of other stuff added, I would argue. There's no Alien movie that ever where he had braces, so that's a difference right there. And there's no Alien where he had a little baby rocket ship, okay? And he looked like a baby. And then number 4, the effect of the use upon the potential market for value of the copyrighted work. And this is where they won their case, because what the judge basically said was, Roy Orbison is selling in the country music zone, and Two Live Crew is selling in the rap zone, and those markets are not the same. Therefore, Roy Orbison or Acuff Rose was not hurt by the rap song coming out, because there's 2 different markets, 2 different people buying 2 different types of music and stuff, right? So whether or not I would be safe or you would be safe, it's really up in the air. And it's a really interesting conversation that we're having right now, because again, you will hear from some people that all fan art is bad, and you will hear from other people that all fan art is good. There's a video on YouTube that was done like 3 or 4 years ago at San Diego Comic-Con by an attorney, and he was asked a lot of these questions. Can we do fan art? Should we not do fan art? Where does the line lie? And like any lawyer, he didn't give any answers. It's, you might get sued, you might be in trouble but you might be okay, but you might not be okay. And that's really what an attorney will do. So if you asked any attorney, should I do this fan art? They're probably going to say no, because attorneys, it's their job, if they're protecting you, to protect you, right? So they would, if you asked an attorney, should I drive a car on the highway? They'd probably say, well, I don't know. You could get into an accident on the highway. So, some people have cited that as a reason. We'll ask any IP attorney, should you do this? And they're going to tell you no. That's not the reason. That's not reason enough to not do it. Okay. There are exceptions. There are rules for parody and satire, and they do cover artists under certain circumstances. Again, the artists that work for a company that have deep pockets, or that are independently wealthy themselves, are going to be in a much better position to fight a large IP and win. Most of us are going to roll over if we get a cease and desist letter and say, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore, and I'm going to pull it from my project. So, if I got that for the work that I'm doing, that's what I would do. I would just say, okay, I'm not going to sell this as a print anymore. I personally feel good about what I'm doing. I feel like I'm adding to the IP. I feel like I'm helping to promote it. I feel like I'm giving ideas and furthering the story that wasn't with the original. And I think that that's really what originality is. We take ideas, we borrow from them, and we add to it. And I feel really good about the stuff that I'm doing. And I hope that you do too, if you're making really good fan art. And I would feel really, really saddened and frustrated if these IPs decided to go in to artist alleys and just kick everybody out that are doing fan art. It wouldn't bother me if they said, we really want you to work, and maybe there's some criteria where it's like, you really need to change your concept from the original or something like that. I don't know. I kind of wouldn't want that to happen either. And the reason for that would be simply because when you start out as an artist, it's hard enough to draw the thing, but to try to come up with a concept as well is much harder, and it's a higher level. When we're starting out, we don't even know how to draw. We're just trying to draw stuff, and I think if artists started getting booted out for doing, but I can see the other side too. There's a lot of fan art where you've got some guys that are selling tons of stuff that are just directly pirated right off of the internet. I could see a point there. I have heard some people say that Marvel and some of these big IPs, they don't really sell prints that much. That's not really their market. They're more into toys and action figures and a lot of stuff that you'd find in a retail store, and prints aren't it. So I've heard that's one of the reasons why they're not going after artists. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something that people have speculated about. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on the whole fan art thing. I personally think fan art is a great thing. I think it really connects artists with their audience, and I think it's a way to expose an artist and their style to a potential buyer who then might buy some of their original stuff as well. And I think it promotes the IP, so I think that everybody wins. I don't think that in most cases the IP is hurt. I think they're helped, and that's why I totally believe in fan art. Do not subscribe to my channel unless you want to see more stuff like this. I give a lot of advice and tips and things like that for illustrators, as I am a children's book illustrator by trade, and also, again, I am a co-founder of svslearn.com, and I always like to plug that because I feel like we do a lot of good there in helping people learn how to draw and paint and become illustrators and comic book artists and graphic novel artists and things like that. And I am signing off now. I'd love to see what you have to say in the comments. If you totally disagree, again, I'm totally fine with that. But I'd love to get your take on it. And maybe you'll see me on my next video.